The dusty, echoing silence of the inherited manor was the first thing that struck Alistair. The house was enormous, a labyrinth of shadow and mahogany that felt less like a dwelling and more like a tomb. It had belonged to his great-aunt Elspeth, a recluse, who, rumour has it, had died sitting bolt upright in a chair, staring at the ceiling. Alistair, a practical man of 21, scoffed at such local law. He was here to catalogue the estate, sell the property, and get back to London. On his third day, the noise began. A faint scratching, like a large rodent, or maybe just old pipes expanding. It came from the attic, a place he hadn't yet explored. He dismissed it, blaming the wind or the setting of the ancient structure. But the noises changed. It became rhythmic, a slow, deliberate scrape, a drag, a thump. It seemed to move across the floorboards directly above his temporary bedroom. Alistair would lie in the darkness, heart pounding a counter rhythm to the sounds from above, rationalizing that the house was merely protesting its long neglect. One morning, fortified by strong coffee and daylight, he found the attic door. It was low, tucked away in a second-floor hallway, accessed by a rickety pull-down ladder. He tugged it down, sending a puff of fine dust into the air. A smell, dry and faintly metallic, drifted down. He ascended into a cramped, dark space, choked with decades of packed belongings, trunks, yellowed oil paintings stacked against the walls, and the brittle remains of a life lived in isolation. He turned on his headlamp. The air was thick with static dust, motes dancing in the beam. He spent the afternoon moving boxes, trying to find the source of the noise. There was no sign of a rodent, no broken vent. The floorboards were thick with dust, save for a clear path where something heavy had recently been dragged. The trail ended abruptly at a far wall where a massive carved oak wardrobe stood. It seemed out of place, too ornate for an attic storage space. He reached for the heavy brass handle. As his fingers curled around the cold metal, a large, sharp crack echoed from directly behind him. He spun around, shining his light into the empty darkness, his breath catching in his throat. It was nothing, he told himself. The sound of the house settling, shaken. He decided the attic exploration could wait until tomorrow. That night, the noises were worse. The scrape, drag, thump was slower, more deliberate, and seemed to pause directly above his bed. The air in his room felt heavy, cold. He lay paralysed, listening to the horrifying silence between each movement, imagining whatever was up there was listening too. Then he heard a new sound then, a soft, wet sloshing. The rhythmic noise from the attic was a feeding sound, as blood poured from the ceiling. He fled the room, grabbing his car keys and phone, needing to escape the house, to feel the cold night air. The front door was jammed. He kicked it, threw his weight against it, but it refused to budge. The house, he realised with dawning horror, was sealed. Panic set in. He ran to the second floor, back to the pull-down ladder. The smell he noticed earlier was stronger now, that metallic, coppery scent, rich and undeniable. The ladder was exactly as he'd left it. He looked up into the black hole of the attic entrance. A single drop of thick, dark fluid splattered onto his forehead. It was blood. He wiped it away with a trembling hand, staring up. The silence from the attic was absolute now. The beam of his headlamp was still on up there, resting on a dusty shelf. "Hello?" he whispered, cursing his own stupidity. A deep, wet exhale answered him from the darkness above. The air in the hallway turned frigid. Alistair scrambled up the ladder, desperate to retrieve his light, desperate to see what was watching him. He reached the top step and swept the beam of his headlamp around the room. The wardrobe was open. Inside, it was not empty. A hulking, indistinct shape shifted in the shadows. It seemed to be constructed of wet, dark wood and sinew, covered in what looked like discarded clothing and frayed upholstery. It looked like it was feeding on something Alistair couldn't quite make out. Hunched over the trunk where he had earlier found his aunt's personal diary, it turned its head. Where a face should have been, it was a knot of ancient, splintered wood, and beneath it, a gaping gore mine lined with jagged, yellowed piano keys instead of teeth, covered in blood. It didn't scream or roar. It simply made the scrape, drag, thump sound. Only this time it came from its heavy jointed legs as it slowly unfolded from the wardrobe, stepping onto the dusty floorboards. Alistair didn't pause to understand the nature of the thing. He scrambled backwards, falling down the ladder and landing hard on the hallway floor. He pulled the ladder up and slammed the attic hatch shut, throwing the bolt home with a satisfying final clunk. He sat there for a long time in the darkness of the hallway, clutching his bruised ribs, listening. The house was completely silent again. The monster in the attic had stopped moving. It was patient. It had waited 50 years for his aunt to die, and now it was waiting for him. He was trapped in the house with a predator that understood patience better than any human ever could. The scrape, drag, and thump began again, slow and methodical, no longer searching, but circling the perimeter of its new domain. Alistair turned in shock to see a second one on the window staring at him. This time it was a pure white wood. Where the piano keys once were, there were now jagged splinters coated in a thick red blood, and the body of a sheriff hanging from its claws. Alistair gazed in shock as the attic door broke open, and he ran immediately, not caring about damage to the house anymore. He grabbed an old antique clock and threw it through the window, breaking it. He scrambled out as fast as he could and grabbed his car keys, scared. He drove off into the night, not looking back.